Hey everybody, welcome back to Southpaws Sports, the show for leftists who love sports. As always, I am your host, Adam, and I am joined by my co-hosts.
I'm Maurice.
And I'm Nathan. Kratom time. Down the hatch, folks.
I also took some Kratom behind the scenes. I don't feel like I've ever mentioned that. I am frequently as Kratom as Nathan, so let that be known that I'm the secret Kratom.
I'm usually high off Coke, so it's a balance.
It's all about balancing it out.
All right, well, now that we are all drugged up and ready to go, let's get right into this week's Power Play. Okay, well, kicking things off this week, we had the bombshell news piece released this week in The Athletic about the Arizona Coyotes. Katie Strang revealed in this piece that the group led by Alex Morello and his fail son, Alex Jr., have created a toxic workplace, defrauded their vendors, and just harassed journalists. Morello was described as creating an environment where employees were scrutinized for minor financial expenditures by a group that claimed that they had drilled down on the cost of napkins. There were issues with players receiving their bonuses. The NHL Players Association to get involved to find out what's going on there. They did get paid eventually. Very sketchy, though. And then they also cut costs in the per diems in the playoff bubble. The Players Association did also have to get involved there to make sure that they could get their Coney dogs or whatever it is they needed to eat that day. So they also continued to cut costs by defrauding their vendors, not paying, and then threatening to sue them when they asked to get paid. Some vendors did go ahead and just sue them back, such as the people who provide their flights. There was then an air of mistrust built within the organization about the media as they just continue to botch and act like gargantuan idiots while running this whole thing. Newly hired GM Bill Armstrong threatened to fire any employee who spoke to the media, claiming that that he would make it. He would trust you until he didn't, and then you wouldn't like to find out what happened when he didn't. He then told the author of this very story that she only knew about the stuff because there were files stolen from his computer, and the offender would, quote, be going to jail. He then gave her a lecture on ethics in journalism. So the Coyotes, of course, they're very concerned about this negative press. And so as such, they did not deny any allegation, but they're just going to continue to be shitheads and threaten the Athletic, claiming the Athletic harasses them for multiple stories that have kind of led up to this one. So they're going to sue the Athletic, obviously, because that's how they've made it very clear they handle these things. So, guys, this is a very funny story. I recommend anyone who hasn't read it going to the Athletic and reading it. What do we love about this?
Well, it is funny, and I assume this is how hockey has to operate in the desert. You know, like basically it's a big scam where the owner is doing like the equivalent of like the Simpsons monorail thing, where he's like, like hockey, it put Winnipeg on the map, and all the Phoenix people are like NHL. Will you pay your bills on time? Of course I will. Every dime. NHL. That's my thoughts on it.
One of my favorite things about this story is that they implicate the owners first before talking about sort of some of the executives beneath them that are also abusing power. Because when you see stories like this, so often that abuse of power starts at the top, but they use people as scapegoats, whether it's the GM or a manager or some other executive. They kind of get used as a scapegoat. And the Coyotes are not allowed to scapegoat anybody here. It starts with the owner, and I appreciated that.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great example of why, like Nathan mentioned, it is a scam. Arizona Coyotes hockey has always been like this, and very excited to see. I was very surprised not to see the fact that the Barstool shithead that they employ as their public relations guy wasn't implicated in this at all. So keep your eyes peeled for that, because it's surely coming. All right. We have up next Bluefield College, a NAIA, which is below NCAA college league. This college in Virginia has been forfeiting games as a result of their college president, David Olive. He was shitting his pants about the basketball team taking knees during the anthem. Olive says he had informed the team earlier this year to stop kneeling because, quote, I did not think a number of our alumni, friends, and donors of the college would view the act of kneeling during the anthem in a positive way. If you take a quick scroll through their Twitter, though, you will find out that he was wrong. They tweeted about continuing the conversation, and unlike the cowards at Ottawa University that we discussed earlier this month with the cheerleading scandal, they are taking the ratio right on the chin there. No locking the account, not even locking it again like Ottawa did. Just taking a huge ratio of telling them that they are idiots. The players have announced, though, that they're going to stay in the locker room during the anthem to avoid the suspensions, which lead to the forfeits. They also are staying in there to avoid standing up for the bullshit song that is the national anthem. The Bluefield College forward Stanley Christian says, quote, they don't want any more backlash, and we would definitely take a knee during the anthem. So, guys, what do we think? That quote is obviously very awesome. Where do we go with this?
This is why I want the anthem to stay in sports and at these sorts of events, because it forces sorts of things like this to come to the limelight. It forces guys like the Bluefield College president to make an ass of himself, to say the quiet part out loud and say that, for him, it's all about the money. And that, these boys who we usually love it when you tap dance for us on the court, but when you do other things, it costs me money, and he doesn't like that.
Exactly. And it's some wild shit. I was like, okay, what conference rule did they break? None. This guy just made up a rule. This is just a rule he made up, which is wild. And I also think it's very funny to think that it's okay if they stay in the locker room. And I'm imagining the college president getting mad because he can't tell if they're kneeling in the locker room or not. It's like Schrodinger's kneeling basketball team. It's like, are they or aren't they? Which is very funny to me.
Yeah, it's just a very absurd situation to put yourself in. And, fuck to David Olive. All right, well, this week we don't have a specific grievance with the Major League Baseball. It's just a bunch of stuff piling on here. But thankfully, we have Bernie Sanders out there calling out some of this. Bernie was on Twitter the other day, like he has been in the past, calling out MLB for skirting costs and getting rid of these minor league teams that cities have paid good money for. Bernie says they want to cut costs, then maybe the Major League Baseball doesn't have to be the sole purveyor of professional baseball in the United States, lording over them the antitrust exemption given to them by Congress. He says could go away. But the MLB, they would be able to maybe respond to this if they hadn't fired all of their social media people for what appears some other cost-cutting reason. We don't really know why the MLB, which makes $8 billion in profit a year, needs to fire these people. It needs to cut all these costs. But while we may have lost the official accounts from the MLB, we do still have the players. The players are still trying to make it fun out here for us. We do have Jack Flaherty out here taunting the St. Louis Cardinals for losing their arbitration case against him. Not just Jack, but even Lucas Giolito, notorious White Sox good guy. He's jumping in to dunk on the Cardinals ownership with Jack. So, guys, this is kind of like a big swirling mess of baseball, as it has been. What do we think of these players trying to make it fun again? What do we think of MLB fucking around? What do we think? Will Bernie save baseball?
Well, I think it's great, the positive stuff. I did a little look into this of MLB's cost cutting, and I came up with a little list for those who don't know. Here are the following American cities and regions that are losing a baseball team. Auburn, Alabama, Boise, Idaho, Burlington, Charlotte, the Kane County Cougars in Illinois. That was my first baseball game ever, so that's gone. Jackson, Mississippi, Missoula, Montana, and both West Virginia teams. Those are millions of people that no longer have access to the sport of baseball. It's a poverty sport.
Well, first of all, I just want to say that Bernie Sanders can't even save himself or the Democratic Party. He can't save himself from liberalism. He can't save himself from succumbing to Bidenism. So I don't think that he will be able to save baseball either. But what I do think is interesting is how, while all this stuff is happening, all these MLB reporters who have been loud as hell when it comes to championing for owners to cut expenses, and when it comes to being basically the lackeys of the MLB owners, they've been loud. But when it comes to the way that they're treating the minor league teams and cutting money and trying to get even more of a monopoly over the industry, a lot of these reporters are silent.
I mean, what do you expect from a man who uses a Bitmoji as an Avi on Twitter?
By the way, folks, before we move on, I'm going to hit that button.
Whoa.
I'm going to hit the button.
Oh.
I'm going to hit the button.
Oh.
According to Axios, there's a map maybe we can throw up. There are now chunks of Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Nebraska, where the closest minor league team is over 500 miles away. So let that sink in. Like I said, Kane County, that was my first baseball game. A new generation of people out there will have no experience with baseball. It's a dying sport, and it can only blame itself.
Just, once again, people, you need to keep in your brain. Do not conflate professional sports with sports. Own it. Oh, we own the sports. All right. We have the Australian Open going on. Of course, that means that we have to talk about the unfair treatment to Serena Williams. It's always an issue in tennis. Not a difference this time. Aryna Sabalenka, she did have some pretty bad behavior in her Australian Open match against Serena. She slammed her racket into the court. Apparently, because she did not break it, it's not that bad. This, of course, drew comparisons to Serena, who has been penalized for sportsmanship violations in the past. This has led to some grotesque comments from people online, people in the media, as well as this just horrific cartoon that we'll throw up there. Obviously, though, everybody was very keen on defending Sabalenka in the Australian Open comments, reminding us that, unlike Serena, she did not break a rule because she did not break her racket. That's the rule. Seems arbitrary to me. And people just were falling over themselves to make this not about Serena. So, guys, what do we think?
I think Sabalenka showing emotion is fine. I think it's good. I think it's fun. It's cool to see. I think the real issue here is that misogyny is embedded into every facet of our society. And you can clearly see it, in the way that it follows Serena around her entire career, which is why I think that in the shots of Sabalenka throwing down the tennis racket, it's very fitting to have Serena Williams in the backdrop as someone who just recently, got into a lot of trouble for doing something very similar.
That's exactly right. If this were Serena or Nick Kyrgios on the men's side, it would be characterized as a meltdown. And I also agree with you in the fact that in our leftist sports utopia of the future, it needs to be known that it is fun to break your racket. It is fun to yell at the refs, and we should all be doing it. Everyone should be doing this. Throw your racket at the refs. This is the future of sport. No matter who you are, is an equal opportunity thing that we should all be enjoying. That's what I think. Throw shit at the refs.
I don't know if I can endorse that opinion. That's Nathan's opinion. That's not
I don't know if I can
opinion of
endorse
Means
that
TV
either.
or the show.
Of throwing stuff
I
at the
will
refs?
endorse. Yeah, I don't know about that, but I do endorse an overtime here for myself.
I think
You
pro
gotta hit
ref.
that
All
button. You all knew it was
All right.
coming. I want to throw that extremely racist cartoon back up, and I just want to dissect it just a little bit because to me it's really important. I think there's a lot of elements at play here. I think that Serena Williams being here and being in particular a darker skinned Black woman who does not have the very typical thin body type that is typical of many white women tennis players, and the body type also that has been sort of associated with white femininity. All of that plays into how the media and even spectators buy into her being more violent, buy into her being more aggressive and less sensible as well. And to top that all off, all those things are heightened because of the juxtaposition to white femininity, or in this case, it's Naomi Osaka, who is in fact a non-white, Black, biracial woman. But in this cartoon, she's been extremely whitewashed. And again, that's a very important aspect of the cartoon and of the racist narrative here, because juxtaposing Serena to a white woman or a whiter woman really heightens all of the pejorative ideas that we have about her.
Snaps from Maurice.
All right, well, Maurice, let us right into the next topic of the power play. We have recently the Biden administration issuing an executive order to direct federal agencies to enforce discrimination suits based on sexual and gender identity, specifically mentioning high school and college athletics. This comes at the heels of 17 different states introducing anti-trans legislation couched in some kind of feminist, alt-right, or, conservative language, like Fairness in Women's Sports Act, being one such bill that was actually passed in Idaho. This horseshit is ramping up after Biden's order in Montana and Mississippi, as conservatives who couldn't tell you the difference between Sabrina Ionescu and Cheryl Swoops are now pretending that they have any idea about women's sports. They think that they're important. And it's just, it's just frankly disgusting. So guys, what do we think going forward here? Where are we at on this battle? What are we thinking?
I think acts like this are obviously despicable, in part because the legislatures are basing their claims off of nonsense. They're baseless. And also I have to think about how much additional distress emotionally and physically and mentally this is going to cause a lot of trans athletes and trans students, especially because this bill is very targeted towards very young people as well. And that's the main thing that is really bothering me about it.
Yeah, this like all conservative culture war bullshit. It reminds me of the classic tweet. The tweet is Twitter is 90% someone imagining a guy, tricking themselves into believing that guy exists and then getting mad about it. And that's now bleeding into real life. All of these bills assume some sort of cabal of Antifa males signing up for female races to win them, I guess. And that doesn't exist. Those guys don't exist. What they're imagining in their heads, those guys are not real. They're just not.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I did the overtime on the last time we did this. I got to take it again because this is fucking burning me up. So hit that button. Well, yeah, I mean, that's just the thing, is that this is a totally made up problem. And the reality is that this is all an attempt to use women's sports, as Maurice mentioned, to police the acceptable limits of femininity, of what a woman is, of enforcing gender roles, specifically how they relate to your body through legislation. And it's just a totally fake concern from conservatives who act like if you made them watch a WNBA game, that's equatable to getting sent to Guantanamo Bay for 3 years. Which they obviously don't think that there's too much wrong with that. So why don't we just let them do that instead of write all this fucking horse shit? All right, to close this out, little prep for March Madness. It is coming soon, and it is certainly going to be madder than ever. The Michigan men's basketball team, they are finally back in action after we had mentioned, they kind of got shut down for really shitty COVID protocol that they had, so letting people go to England and all that shit. And shockingly, the Big Ten really seems to think that they're going to have to play all these games. Don't know how they're going to do it. They are missing 5 games. They missed 5 games. We have about 3 weeks of the season left to fit in these 5 games on top of the 5 that they also still have scheduled to play. Dwan Howard, when asked about it, he doesn't really seem convinced that they're going to make it. Did pull some arrogant Michigan graduate bullshit when mentioning it. We just have to throw it out there that he did say, "We're not Nebraska," when asked about it. Nebraska, who he is mentioning, also, they missed 10 games, and they are rapidly trying to make them up. They do have to hit 20. They are playing back-to-backs, double headers that they're getting blown out in completely because they are bad, and they're being forced to play all these games. Jalen Johnson's at Duke. He saw this madness happening. He didn't want any part of it. He has opted out completely from the season to go risk his life making actual money in the NBA. Good on him. This, of course, though, did send all the craziest and worst people of the internet into a tiz, including Mr. Basketball himself, John Rothstein. He reacted very normally. And to that, we just want to ask again, John, have you ever actually had a real job in your life? So, guys, what do we think?
Well, it's Jalen Johnson's prerogative to opt out. I think that it's good for every Duke basketball player to opt out. That would be my preference for that. But in all seriousness, I mean, these 50-year-old men who also, most of them, when they're announcing and when they're saying this kid quit on his team, they're at home. Most of them. You don't realize this, but they're not at the stadium. They're at home. So I don't know what happened with Jalen Johnson. I'm not going to speculate, but I mean, it's his fucking right. He's not getting paid.
Yeah. I know you kind of said that first part in jest, but I agree with it. I do wish that all the players of Duke could opt out. I wish that all the athletes and players had the sort of individual power that someone like Jalen Johnson does, and so that they can do stuff like that. Because it's heartbreaking to hear a kid like Isaiah Livers talk about, the fact that he knows he's sacrificing his body. He knows that this is going to have long-term effects, maybe for the rest of his life, but he has to do it anyway. And a bunch of guys are going to make a shit ton of money off him because without him, without his teammates, without March Madness, for a second year in a row, the NCAA would likely collapse.
That would be just terrible. Just terrible if that happened.
Golly gosh.